She came to the farm with nothing, hungry, alone, and hiding a past she couldn't outrun. He offered food, shelter, and a quiet life. But when old ghosts return and hard choices loom, will love be enough to keep her there? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The afternoon sun beat down on the dusty road leading to Fazenda Boa Esperança. The farm's white gate stood like a beacon against the clear blue sky. Lucas Amaral wiped sweat from his brow as he finished mending the fence along his property line. At 30 years old, Lucas had the strong build of a man who worked the land with his own hands. His tanned skin showed the hours spent under the sun, and his dark hair had a few strands of premature grey, the result of taking on the farm alone after his father passed away 3 years ago. That should hold, he muttered to himself, gathering his tools. He glanced at his wristwatch. It was nearly 5, time to head back to the house and start dinner, another meal alone. Lucas had grown accustomed to the silence, but that didn't mean he liked it. The farm had once been filled with voices, his parents, the workers, and neighbors stopping by. Now it was just him and occasional help during harvest season. As Lucas walked toward the farmhouse, he noticed movement at the front gate. Someone was standing there, a slim figure leaning against the post. He squinted, trying to make out who it might be. They didn't get many visitors out here, especially unannounced ones. "Hello?" he called out, approaching cautiously. The figure straightened, and Lucas could see it was a young woman. She looked exhausted, her clothes wrinkled and dusty from travel. A torn backpack hung from one shoulder. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was wondering if you needed any help around the farm. I can work for food." Lucas studied her face. She couldn't be older than 25, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes, though tired, had a determined look that caught his attention. Pride was written all over her face. This wasn't easy for her. "What's your name?" Lucas asked. "Natalia. Natalia Viana." "I'm Lucas Amaral. This is my farm." He gestured to the expanse of land behind him. "Why don't you come inside, Natalia? You look like you could use a meal first, then we can talk about work." Relief washed over her face, quickly replaced by wariness. "I don't want charity. I can work for my food." Lucas nodded, understanding her pride. "It's not charity. Consider it an advance. Everyone needs to eat before they can work properly." After a moment's hesitation, Natalia nodded and followed him. Up the path to the farmhouse, Lucas noticed she walked with careful steps, as if conserving energy. When was the last time she had eaten? The farmhouse kitchen was simple but spacious. Lucas gestured for Natalia to sit at the wooden table while he washed his hands. "How long? Has it been since you've eaten?" he asked, opening the refrigerator. Natalia looked down at her hands. "Almost 2 days." Lucas didn't respond, but his movements became more purposeful. He pulled out leftovers from the previous night, a hearty bean stew with rice and some grilled chicken. As he heated the food on the stove, he sliced some fresh bread and placed it in front of Natalia with a glass of water. "Start with this," he said kindly. Natalia murmured a thank you and tore off a piece of bread. She tried to eat slowly, but hunger won out. By the time Lucas set the plate of hot food in front of her, the bread was gone. "There's plenty more," Lucas assured her, sitting across from her with his own plate. "Eat as much as you need." Natalia couldn't remember when food had tasted so good. Maybe it was the hunger, or maybe it was the way Lucas didn't stare at her while she ate, giving her the dignity of enjoying her meal without scrutiny. "So," Lucas said after they'd both eaten, "what brings you to Boa Esperança?" "We're pretty far from the main road." Natalia set down her fork. "I was heading to the city for job interviews. The bus dropped me at the highway junction, but I missed the connection. Used my last money on that ticket." She looked up at him directly for the first time. "I saw your farm from the road and thought maybe you could use some help." Lucas nodded slowly. "Where are you from?" "A small town about 100 miles north." "There's nothing for me there anymore." Something in the way she said it told Lucas not to press further. "Well," he said, standing to clear the plates, "I do need help around here. Harvest season starts next month and I'm behind on repairs. The guest room hasn't been used in a while, but it's clean. You can stay there if you want." Natalia's eyes widened. "I can't pay for lodging. I thought maybe I could work for a meal." And I'm offering food, shelter, and a job, Lucas interrupted gently. The room would go unused otherwise. Consider it part of your compensation. Why would you do that for a stranger? Suspicion edged her voice. Lucas smiled slightly. Because people helped me when I needed it. That's how things work out here. He paused. No strings attached, Natalia. Just honest work and a place to stay until you figure out your next step. Natalia studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. She found none, just simple kindness in his steady gaze. Thank you, she finally said. I'll work hard. I know you will. Lucas picked up a small kerosene lamp from the counter. Come on, I'll show you to your room. You look ready to fall over. The guest room was small but comfortable, with a single bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a wooden dresser, and a window overlooking the orchard. Lucas set the lamp on the bedside table. Bathrooms down the hall, there should be clean towels in the cabinet. I get up at 5, but you can sleep in tomorrow. Rest up first. Natalia stood in the center of the room, her torn backpack clutched to her chest. I don't know how to thank you. No need, Lucas said simply. Good night, Natalia. After he left, Natalia sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the soft quilt. It had been so long since anyone had shown her kindness without wanting something in return. She was too tired to cry, too tired to worry about what tomorrow would bring. For now she was safe, she was fed, and she had a real bed to sleep in. Within minutes of lying down, she was asleep. Lucas rose with the sun, as he did every morning. He moved quietly through the house, not wanting to wake his unexpected guest. After a quick breakfast of coffee and toast, he headed out to start his chores, leaving a note on the kitchen table telling Natalia to help herself to anything in the fridge. By mid-morning, Lucas was repairing the roof of the chicken coop when he spotted Natalia walking across the yard. She had clearly found the bathroom. Her hair was damp from a shower, and she wore the same clothes but had washed her face and hands. She looked younger in the daylight, and Lucas could see that worry had aged her beyond her years. Good morning, she called up to him. What can I help with? Lucas climbed down the ladder. You don't have to start right away. Take some time to... I want to work, Natalia interrupted firmly. Please. Lucas understood. Work was dignity. Work meant she wasn't taking charity. All right then. Have you had breakfast? She nodded. I found your note. Thank you. Good. Can you handle a paintbrush? The fence along the east side needs a fresh coat. I can handle it, she said confidently. Lucas showed her where the supplies were kept in the barn, helped her load them onto a wheelbarrow, and walked her to the section of fence that needed painting. He demonstrated the proper technique, making sure she knew how he wanted it done. I'll be working on the coop roof if you need anything, he told her. Take breaks when you need to. There's water in that blue cooler. Natalia nodded and got to work immediately, applying herself to the task with focused determination. Lucas watched her for a moment, impressed by her work ethic, then returned to his own chores. The morning passed in companionable silence, each absorbed in their work. When lunchtime came, Lucas called Natalia back to the house. He'd made sandwiches and sliced fresh tomatoes from his garden. The fence looks good, he said as they ate. You've done this before. My father had a small repair business. I helped him sometimes. He taught you well. Lucas passed her more tomatoes. What else can you do? Natalia thought for a moment. Basic carpentry, painting, some plumbing. I can cook, clean, tend a garden. I learn quickly. Jack of all trades, Lucas commented, impressed. When you grow up without much money, you learn to do things yourself. Lucas nodded, understanding completely. Same here. My father believed in self-sufficiency. Said a farmer who can't fix his own equipment isn't much of a farmer. Sounds like a wise man. He was. Lucas's voice softened. He passed away 3 years ago. My mother the year before that. I'm sorry, Natalia said quietly. It's hard losing family. It is. Lucas studied her face. You sound like you know. Natalia just nodded, offering no further explanation. Lucas didn't press. After lunch, Lucas showed Natalia around the farm, the orchard with its rows of orange and mango trees, the vegetable garden, the barn where he kept a tractor and 2 horses, and the fields where he grew corn and beans. Boa Esperanza wasn't the biggest farm in the region, but it was productive and well-maintained. "It's beautiful here," Natalia said, as they walked back toward the house. "Peaceful." "It is that," Lucas agreed, "sometimes too peaceful. Gets quiet when you're the only one around." Natalia glanced at him. "No family nearby?" "No. My sister lives in the city with her husband and kids. They visit on holidays, but that's about it." "No wife? Girlfriend?" The questions slipped out before Natalia could stop herself. "Sorry, that's none of my business." Lucas smiled faintly. "It's fine. No wife, no girlfriend. There was someone a few years back, but she didn't like farm life. Wanted bright lights and excitement." "And you didn't?" "This is where I belong," Lucas said simply. "I tried city life for a while after college. It wasn't for me." They had reached the garden gate. Lucas checked his watch. "I need to fix the irrigation system in the north field. Why don't you finish the fence painting? We can meet back here around 6 for dinner." Natalia nodded and headed back to her task. As she walked away, Lucas found himself watching her. There was something about Natalia Viana that intrigued him, a quiet strength, a resilience that resonated with him. She carried herself with dignity despite her circumstances. Lucas turned toward the north field, pushing away the unexpected thoughts. Natalia was just passing through. She needed help and he could provide it. That was all. The days fell into a rhythm. Lucas and Natalia worked side by side on the farm, tackling the endless list of chores that came with rural life. Natalia proved to be a hard worker, never complaining even when tasks were difficult or tedious. She was especially good with the animals, showing a gentle touch with the horses and chickens. A week passed, then 2. Natalia's presence changed the farmhouse in subtle ways. Fresh wildflowers appeared in a jar on the kitchen table. The shelves were dusted, the windows cleaned until they sparkled, and most noticeably the silence that had filled the house was replaced with conversation, even laughter. In the evenings, after dinner, they would sit on the porch and talk. Lucas told stories about growing up on the farm, about his college days studying agriculture, about his dreams for expanding the orchard. Natalia spoke less about her past, but shared her knowledge of plants, her love of reading, her hope to someday have a small garden of her own. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Lucas found himself wondering what it would be like if Natalia stayed permanently. The thought surprised him. He had grown accustomed to solitude, had convinced himself it was enough, but now, with her quiet presence beside him on the porch swing, the idea of returning to his lonely existence seemed unbearable. "Penny for your thoughts," Natalia said, breaking the comfortable silence. Lucas smiled. "Just thinking about the harvest. We should have a good year if the weather holds." Natalia nodded, but her expression became thoughtful. "Lucas, I need to ask you something." "Of course. How much have I earned so far? Working here, I mean." The question caught him off guard. "I haven't really been keeping track. Why do you ask?" "I need to know when I'll have enough saved for a bus ticket to the city." Her voice was quiet but determined. "I'm grateful for everything, but I can't stay here forever. I need to find a real job, get back on my feet." Lucas felt a surprising pang of disappointment. Of course she would want to leave. Boa Esperanza was just a temporary refuge, not her home. "You've more than earned your keep," he said carefully. "If you want to go to the city, I can drive you there myself." "No need to take the bus." "That's not what I meant." Natalia turned to face him directly. "I want to pay my way. I don't want to owe anyone anything." Lucas understood her pride. "You don't owe me, Natalia. But if it makes you feel better, I'll figure out what your wages would be. We can settle. Up before you go?" "Thank you." She looked out at the darkening sky again. "I should probably leave soon. I've already stayed longer than I planned." Lucas wanted to ask her to stay, but the words stuck in his throat. What could he offer her here? A life of hard work on an isolated farm. She deserved more than that. "Whenever you're ready," he said instead. "No rush." Later that night, Lucas lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The thought of Natalia leaving left an unexpected hollow feeling in his chest. In just a few weeks, she had transformed from a stranger at his gate to, what? A friend? An employee? Something more? He turned onto his side, punching his pillow into shape. It didn't matter what he felt. Natalia had her own life to rebuild, her own path to follow. All he could do was help her on her way, even if that meant watching her walk out of his life as suddenly as she had entered it. The next morning, Natalia woke early before the sun was fully up. She hadn't slept well, thoughts of leaving Boa, Esperanza keeping her awake. It was strange how quickly this place had begun to feel like home, how quickly Lucas had become important to her, but she couldn't stay. She had learned the hard way that depending on others, no matter how kind they seemed, was dangerous. People changed. Kindness could turn to control. Freedom could become a cage. No, better to make her own way, rely on herself alone. Natalia dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen to start breakfast before Lucas woke up. To her surprise, he was already there, nursing a cup of coffee at the table. "You're up early," she said, moving to the stove. "Couldn't sleep." Lucas took a sip of his coffee. "There's something I need to tell you." Natalia tensed. Here it came. The catch, the string attached to all his kindness. There was always a catch. "What is it?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. "I'm going into town today to meet with the bank. I've been thinking about expanding the orchard, maybe hiring some permanent help for the harvest season." He paused. "I'll be gone most of the day. Can you handle things here?" Natalia relaxed slightly. "Of course, what needs to be done?" "Just the usual chores. Feed the animals, check the irrigation in the garden." Lucas stood up. "I made some calculations last night about your wages." He pulled an envelope from his shirt pocket and placed it on the table. "This is what you've earned so far, based on standard rates for farm work in the area." Another envelope followed. "And this is a bonus for all the extra work you've done around the house." Natalia stared at the envelopes. "Lucas, I can't accept a bonus. The room and board is part of your regular compensation," he interrupted firmly. "The bonus is for going above and beyond. You've earned it, Natalia." She picked up the envelopes, surprised by their weight. "Thank you." Lucas nodded and headed for the door. "I'll be back before dinner. Help yourself to anything you need." After he left, Natalia opened the envelopes. Her eyes widened at the amount, far more than she had expected. Enough to get to the city and rent a small room while she looked for work. Enough to start over. She should be happy. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Independence, self-reliance, a chance to build her own life. So why did the thought of leaving fill her with such sadness? Natalia tucked the money away in her backpack and went about her chores, trying to push aside the conflicting emotions. By midday, she had fed the animals, checked the irrigation, and weeded the vegetable garden. With nothing pressing left to do, she decided to bake bread for dinner, a small thank you to Lucas for his generosity. As she kneaded the dough in the warm kitchen, Natalia found herself thinking about the future. What waited for her in the city? A small apartment if she was lucky. A job, probably something menial at first. Strangers who wouldn't care if she ate or slept or smiled. And what would she be leaving behind? This beautiful farm. The rhythm of days measured by sunrise and sunset rather than clocks. Animals that knew her voice. A kitchen that smelled of fresh bread and coffee. Lucas. The realization hit her with unexpected force. It wasn't just the farm she would miss. It was him. His quiet strength, his gentle kindness, the way he looked at her like she mattered. Natalia shaped the dough with more force than necessary. It was dangerous to think that way. She barely knew him, and men who seemed kind could change. Her father had taught her that lesson well enough. Better to leave now while the memories were still good, before anything could spoil them. As the sun began to set, Natalia heard the sound of Lucas's truck coming up the driveway. She put the freshly baked bread on the table and went out to meet him. Lucas stepped out of the truck, his face breaking into a smile when he saw her. "Something smells good." "I made bread," Natalia said. "Thought it would go well with dinner." "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." They stood looking at each other for a long moment. Lucas seemed about to say something more when a car appeared, behind his truck coming up the driveway. "Are you expecting someone?" Natalia asked. Lucas frowned. "No." The car parked and a woman stepped out, tall, elegantly dressed, with perfectly styled blonde hair. She waved cheerfully. "Lucas, surprise." The woman approached, her high heels unsuitable for the gravel driveway. "I thought I'd stop by on my way back from the conference." Lucas's expression was unreadable. "Elena, this is unexpected." The woman, Elena, reached him and placed a kiss on his cheek. "That's the point of a surprise, silly." She turned, noticing Natalia for the first time. "Oh, hello, are you the new help Lucas mentioned in his email?" Natalia felt a flush creep up her neck. "I've been working here temporarily, yes?" Elena smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "How lovely. Lucas, aren't you going to introduce us properly?" Lucas cleared his throat. "Elena, this is Natalia Viana." "Natalia, this is Elena Morais, my ex-girlfriend." "Former girlfriend," Elena corrected with a laugh. "We're still friends, aren't we, Lucas?" "Of course," Lucas said, though his tone lacked conviction. "What brings you out this way, Elena?" "Like I said, I was at a conference in Ribeirão Preto. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." She linked her arm through his. "We have so much to catch up on. I'm starving. Is dinner ready?" Lucas glanced at Natalia, an apology in his eyes. "We were just about to start cooking." "Perfect timing, then. I can help." Elena turned toward the house, pulling Lucas along. "You don't mind setting another place at the table, do you, Natalia?" Before Natalia could respond, Elena was leading Lucas toward the house, chatting animatedly about the conference and the people they knew in common. Lucas looked back once, but allowed himself to be guided inside. Natalia stood alone in the yard, the warm glow from the kitchen windows suddenly seeming less welcoming. Elena's appearance had made one thing crystal clear. Natalia didn't belong here. This wasn't her home, and Lucas wasn't anything to her. Just a kind employer who had helped her when she needed it. The money in her backpack felt heavy now. Maybe it was time to go after all. With a deep breath, Natalia squared her shoulders and walked toward the house. She would be polite through dinner. She would thank Lucas for everything he had done. And tomorrow she would leave Fazenda Boa Esperança and him behind. Dinner was an uncomfortable affair. Elena dominated the conversation, talking about her successful career as a real estate agent in the city, the important people she knew, and the luxury condominium development she was currently selling. She barely acknowledged Natalia, except to ask her to pass the salt or refill the water glasses. Lucas tried several times to include Natalia in the conversation, but Elena skillfully steered the discussion back to topics only she and Lucas shared. Mutual. Friends, past events, inside jokes that left Natalia feeling like an outsider. "Remember that ridiculous bed and breakfast in Minas Gerais?" Elena laughed, touching Lucas's arm. "With the rooster that wouldn't stop crowing right outside our window?" Lucas smiled politely. "That was a long time ago, Elena." "Not that long." Elena turned to Natalia with a practiced smile. "Lucas and I dated for almost 2 years. We were quite serious, weren't we, darling?" "It was serious," Lucas agreed, his eyes flickering to Natalia. "But it's in the past now." Elena's smile tightened slightly. "Well, the past has a way of becoming the future sometimes." She took a delicate bite of bread. "This is good. Did you bake it, Lucas?" "Natalia made it," Lucas said. "How domestic." Elena turned to Natalia. "So where are you from?" Lucas mentioned in his email that he had hired temporary help, but he didn't share many details. Natalia straightened in her chair. "A small town north of here. I was heading to the city when I stopped at Boa Esperança." "And what do you do besides farm work and baking bread?" The question held a subtle edge, like Elena was trying to categorize Natalia, to put her in a box labeled unskilled labor. "I've worked in many fields," Natalia answered simply. "Whatever pays the bills." Elena nodded, as if this confirmed something, so for her. "It must be nice to have such flexibility. I could never do that. My career is everything to me. I've worked so hard to get where I am." "Everyone's path is different," Lucas interjected. "Natalia has been a tremendous help around the farm." I don't know what I would have done without her these past few weeks. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. Weeks? I thought this was a recent arrangement. Almost a month now, Lucas said, his voice warming as he looked at Natalia. Best decision I've made in a long time, hiring Natalia. Natalia felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Lucas had never expressed his appreciation so openly before. Elena set down her fork with a bit more force than necessary. How wonderful. Though, I imagine Natalia will be moving on soon. The city offers so many more opportunities than farm work. Before Natalia could respond, Lucas spoke up. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to Natalia about staying on permanently. The farm needs someone, reliable, especially with the expansion I'm planning. This was news to Natalia. Lucas hadn't mentioned anything about wanting her to stay permanently. Was he just saying this for Elena's benefit, or did he mean it? How sensible, Elena said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Well, if you'll... Excuse me, I need to freshen up before dessert. Natalia, where might I find the bathroom? Down the hall to the right, Natalia replied, standing to clear the plates. As soon as Elena was out of earshot, Natalia turned to Lucas. You don't have to do that. Do what? Pretend you want me to stay to make your ex-girlfriend jealous. Lucas's eyes widened. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You never mentioned anything about a permanent position before she showed up. I was going to talk to you about it when I got back from town today, Lucas said quietly. That's part of why I went to the bank, to make sure I could afford to hire someone full-time. Natalia searched his face for any sign of deception, but found only sincerity. Why would you want me to stay? You barely know me. I know enough, Lucas said simply. I know you're hard-working and honest. I know the animals trust you. I know the farm runs better with you here. He paused. And I know I like having you around. The last part was said so quietly, Natalia almost missed it. Before she could respond, they heard Elena's heels clicking on the hallway floor. Your guest. Room is charming, Lucas, Elena said as she re-entered the kitchen. So cozy and rustic. Natalia noticed Elena's emphasis on the word rustic, as if it were a polite way of saying primitive. She felt a flash of defensiveness on Lucas's behalf. Lucas has done an amazing job maintaining this farmhouse, Natalia said. It's both beautiful and practical, just like the rest of Boa Esperanza. Elena's smile didn't reach her eyes. Yes, Lucas always was good with his hands, though I always thought his talents were wasted out here. He could have been an architect or an engineer in the city. We used to talk about that, didn't we, Lucas? How you'd eventually sell this place and move closer to civilization. That was your plan, not mine, Lucas said firmly. I never wanted to leave the farm. An awkward silence fell over the kitchen. Natalia busied herself making coffee while Lucas served the dessert, a simple flan he had purchased in town. Elena took a small bite of the flan and smiled tightly. Delicious, almost as good as what we get in the city. After dessert, Elena announced she should be going. I have an early showing tomorrow with a very important client. Can't be late. It was nice of you to stop by, Lucas said politely, walking her to the door. We should get together properly soon, Elena replied, her voice deliberately loud enough for Natalia to hear from the kitchen. Come to the city for the weekend. I could show you the new restaurant that opened on Avenida Paulista. Very exclusive. They only take reservations a month in advance, but I know the owner. I'll have to see. Harvest season is approaching, and there's a lot to do here. Elena leaned in and kissed Lucas on the cheek, lingering a moment too long. Don't be a stranger, Lucas. Some of us miss you in the city. After Elena drove away, Lucas returned to the kitchen where Natalia was washing dishes. He picked up a towel and began drying the clean plates. I'm sorry about that, he said after a moment. For what? Elena can be as intense. We haven't seen each other in over a year. I don't know why she showed up like this. Natalia handed him a wet plate. She still has feelings for you. It's obvious. Lucas shook his head. Elena doesn't have feelings for me. She has feelings about the idea of me, the man she thought she could turn me into. When she realized I would never leave the farm, never become the city businessman she wanted, she left. People change, Natalia said, thinking of how quickly her own life had transformed. Maybe she regrets her decision. Maybe. Lucas set down the dried plate. But my feelings haven't changed. This is my home, it always will be. They finished the dishes in companionable silence. As Natalia wiped down the counter, she found herself thinking about Lucas's offer of permanent work. Was it real? And if it was, should she accept it? I meant what I said earlier, Lucas said, as if reading her thoughts, about wanting you to stay on permanently. The offer is genuine if you're interested. Natalia turned to face him. Why me? You could hire someone with more experience, someone who knows more about farming. Experience isn't everything. You work hard, you learn quickly, and you care about doing things right. Lucas hesitated, then added, and the truth is, the farm feels more like a home with you here. The simple honesty in his voice made Natalia's heart skip a beat. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to stay at Boa Esperança, to wake up each morning to this peaceful place, to work alongside Lucas day after day, to belong somewhere again. But then, reality intruded. She barely knew this man. Her plan had always been to get to the city, to find a real job, to be independent. Staying here would mean depending on Lucas, and dependence was dangerous. I need to think about it, she said finally. Lucas nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. He wished her good night and headed to his room, leaving Natalia alone with her thoughts. Later, lying in bed, Natalia stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions, from the surprise of Elena's visit to the shock of Lucas's job offer. She should be happy. She had options now, money to go to the city or a chance to stay here with steady work. So why did she feel so confused? Part of her wanted to stay. Boa Esperança had begun to feel like home, and Lucas was unlike any man she had ever known. Kind without expecting anything in return, strong without being intimidating, honest without being cruel. But another part of her remembered the harsh lessons of her past. Trust had been a luxury she couldn't afford. The last time she had trusted someone, it had ended in betrayal. Natalia turned onto her side, pulling the quilt tighter around her shoulders. Tomorrow she would make her decision. City or farm, independence or connection. The safe path or the unknown. Lucas rose early the next morning, his mind still full of the previous evening's events. Eleanor's unexpected visit had stirred up old memories, none of them particularly pleasant. Their relationship had been a mistake from the beginning, a city woman trying to change a countryman, and him foolishly thinking love could bridge their differences. But Eleanor's visit had clarified something for him. His feelings for Natalia were nothing like what he had felt for Elena. This wasn't about physical attraction or the novelty of companionship. It was deeper, more fundamental, like recognizing a part of himself in another person. He wanted Natalia to stay not just because she was a good worker, but because the farm felt right with her in it. He felt right with her in it. Lucas headed to the kitchen to start coffee, surprised to find Natalia already there, fully dressed, her backpack at her feet. "You're up early," he said, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in his stomach at the sight of that packed bag. "Couldn't sleep," Natalia replied. She poured him a cup of coffee and handed it to him. "We need to talk." Lucas nodded, bracing himself for what was coming. "Let's sit down." They settled at the kitchen table, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the wooden surface. "I've made a decision," Natalia began, her voice steady. "I appreciate your offer of permanent work, but I can't accept it." Despite having anticipated this, Lucas felt a sharp pang of disappointment. "May I ask why?" Natalia took a deep breath. "When I came here, I was desperate. I hadn't eaten in days, I had nowhere to go, and you were kind to me. You gave me food, shelter, and work when I needed it most." She looked down at her hands. "But I can't build a life on gratitude. I need to stand on my own 2 feet. Is that what you think this is about? Gratitude?" Lucas shook his head. "Natalia, I'm offering you this job because you're good at it, because the farm runs better with you here. It has nothing to do with charity or gratitude." "Maybe not for you," Natalia said quietly, "but for me, I need to know I can take care of myself. I've relied on others before, and it didn't end well." Lucas wanted to argue, to convince her to stay, but he recognized the determination in her eyes. She had made up her mind. "When will you leave?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Today, if possible. Could you drive me to the bus station in town?" Lucas nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The thought of the farm without Natalia, of his life without her, felt like a physical ache in his chest. But he respected her decision, even if he didn't agree with it. "I'll take you after breakfast," he said finally. They ate in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. After clearing the dishes, Natalia gathered her few belongings while Lucas went to bring the truck around. As they drove toward town, Lucas kept his eyes on the road, trying to find the right words to say goodbye. Nothing seemed adequate. "I want to thank you," Natalia said, suddenly breaking the silence, "for everything. You saved my life that day." "You would have found a way to survive," Lucas replied. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." "Maybe, but you made it easier." She looked out the window at the passing countryside. "I'll never forget that." They reached the bus station too quickly. Lucas parked and helped Natalia with her bag, walking her to the ticket counter. She purchased a one-way ticket to São Paulo, the bus leaving in 30 minutes. "You have enough money?" Lucas asked as they moved to the waiting area. Natalia nodded. "More than enough, thanks to you." An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much Lucas wanted to say, but the words stuck in his throat. "Tell her how you feel," a voice in his head urged. Ask her to stay, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Her mind was made up, and he had to respect that. "If you ever need anything," he said instead, "you know where to find me. Boa Esperança will always be open to you." Natalia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Thank you, Lucas." The bus arrived, its brakes hissing as it pulled into the station. Passengers began gathering their belongings, preparing to board. "That's me," Natalia said, picking up her backpack. Lucas nodded, his chest tight with emotion. "Take care of yourself, Natalia." She hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged him. Briefly, "Goodbye, Lucas." Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the bus, not looking back. Lucas watched as she boarded, as she found a seat by the window. He raised his hand in farewell as the bus pulled away and thought he saw her wave back, but he couldn't be sure through the tinted glass. The drive back to the farm was the longest of his life. Every inch of the road reminded him of Natalia. The spot where they had stopped to watch a family of deer, the bend where she had asked him about the history of Boa Esperança, the junction where he had first seen her walking, tired and hungry, toward his gate. By the time Lucas reached the farm, a dull acceptance had settled over him. Natalia was gone. She had made her choice, and he had to respect it. Life would go on, the farm would go on, he would go on alone again. But as he parked the truck and stepped out, the emptiness of the farmhouse hit him anew. No Natalia humming. In the kitchen. No Natalia collecting eggs in the chicken coop. No Natalia sitting beside him on the porch as the sun set. Lucas took a deep breath and headed to the barn. Work was the answer. It always had been. He would lose himself in the endless tasks of the farm, and eventually, the ache in his chest would fade. It had to. São Paulo was exactly as Natalia remembered, loud, crowded, impersonal. After the peaceful rhythm of Boa Esperança, the city's constant noise and movement felt overwhelming. With Lucas's payment in her pocket, Natalia was able to rent a small room in a boarding house not far from the city center. It wasn't much, just a bed, a dresser, and a sink, with a shared bathroom down the hall. But it was clean and secure. The landlady a stern but fair woman who didn't ask too many questions. The next day, Natalia began her job search. She visited cafes, shops, and offices, filling out applications and leaving copies of her sparse resume. By the end of the week, she had secured a position as a waitress at a busy cafe near the main bus terminal. The pay wasn't great, but with tips, she could cover her rent and basic needs. The work was hard. Long hours on her feet, dealing with impatient customers and a temperamental manager. But Natalia threw herself into it, grateful for the distraction. When she was busy, she didn't have time to think about the farm, about Lucas, about what might have been if she had stayed. At night, alone in her small room, it was harder to keep those thoughts at bay. She would lie awake, listening to the sounds of the city, car horns, distant sirens, the murmur of her neighbors through the thin walls, and find herself longing for the peaceful nights at Boa Esperança, where the only sounds had been crickets and the soft rustle of wind in the trees. 2 weeks after leaving the farm, Natalia was clearing tables during the cafe's busy lunch rush when a familiar voice caught her attention. "Natalia, is that you?" She turned to find Elena standing there, elegantly dressed in a tailored suit, looking out of place among the cafe's working-class clientele. "Elena," Natalia acknowledged, balancing a tray of dirty dishes. "What are you doing here?" "I have a client meeting nearby," Elena said, her eyes taking in Natalia's waitress uniform with barely concealed satisfaction. "So this is where you ended." "Up waiting tables." Natalia straightened her spine. "It's honest work." "Of course it is," Elena agreed, though her tone suggested otherwise. "It's just such a waste. Lucas was so impressed with your skills on the farm." The mention of Lucas's name sent a pang through Natalia's heart. "How is he?" she asked before she could stop herself. Elena's perfectly arched eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, you haven't heard from him? I assumed you two kept in touch." "No," Natalia said, keeping her voice neutral. "We haven't." "Well, he's been quite busy. The harvest is coming up and he's short-handed now." Elena adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder. "I've been driving out to see him on weekends, trying to help where I can, though farm work isn't really my thing." The image of Elena at Boa Esperança, in Lucas's kitchen, maybe sitting on the porch where Natalia had sat with him, sent a stab of jealousy through her that was as surprising as it was unwelcome. "I'm sure he appreciates the company," Natalia said stiffly. Elena smiled, a calculated curve of her lips. "Yes, I think he does. It was lovely seeing you, Natalia. Good luck with all this." She gestured vaguely at the cafe before turning to leave. For the rest of her shift, Natalia couldn't shake the encounter from her mind. The thought of Elena at the farm with Lucas made her stomach twist uncomfortably. She told herself it shouldn't matter. She had made her choice. Lucas was free to spend time with whomever he wanted. But it did matter, more than she wanted to admit. That night, Natalia sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the cracked wall of her rented room. The city sounds outside her window seemed louder than usual, more intrusive. She thought about Lucas, about Elena's visit to the cafe, about the life she had left behind at Boa Esperança. Had she made a mistake? The question echoed in her mind, refusing to be silenced. She had come to the city seeking independence, wanting to prove she could stand on her own. And she had done that. She had a job, a roof over her head, food on her table. By any practical measure, she had succeeded. So why did it feel like failure? Because independence meant nothing if it left you empty inside. Because proving you could stand alone wasn't the same as choosing to stand alone when something better was offered. Natalia pulled out the small bundle Lucas had given her the day she left. The bread, long since eaten, the honey half used, and the note worn from repeated readings. "Whatever road you take this with you. You'll always have food if you're hungry, a place to rest when you're tired, and a heart waiting for you if you want love." At the time, she had read it as a kind gesture, a metaphorical offering. Now looking at it again, she wondered if it had been something more, a promise, a declaration, an invitation to return. But even if it was, could she go back? Would Lucas still want her there after she had walked away? And what about Elena? Was she already filling the space Natalia had left behind? Natalia carefully folded the note and put it back in her bag. She had decisions to make, and this time she couldn't afford to make the wrong one. 3 weeks after Natalia's departure, Lucas was in the orchard, checking the orange trees for signs of disease. The harvest was approaching, and while the crop looked good, there was always more work than hands to do it. He had fallen back into his solitary routine, rising with the sun, working until dusk, eating simple meals alone, going to bed exhausted only to wake and do it all again the next day. It was the life he had lived before Natalia arrived, but now it felt hollow, like a pale imitation of what his days could be. Elena had been visiting on weekends, arriving in her impractical city car with her impractical city clothes. talking endlessly about how he should sell the farm, how much money he could make in real estate development, how she could help him find a nice apartment in São Paulo. Lucas listened politely, but firmly declined each suggestion. "You're wasting your life out here," Eleanor had said during her last visit, frustration evident in her voice. "All this work for what? So you can grow old alone on a piece of land that's more burden than blessing?" "This land is my heritage," Lucas had replied quietly. "My father's and his father's before him. It's not a burden. It's my purpose." Eleanor had left in a huff, saying she wouldn't be back until he came to his senses. Lucas wasn't holding his breath. As he examined a tree branch, Lucas heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway. He sighed, assuming Elena had changed her mind and returned. The last thing he needed was another argument about his life choices. Lucas made his way back to the house, prepared to politely but firmly ask Elena to leave. But when he rounded the corner of the barn, it wasn't Elena's sleek sedan he saw, but a taxi. And stepping out of that taxi, looking uncertain but determined, was Natalia. Lucas stopped in his tracks, sure he was hallucinating. But the figure by the taxi remained, paying the driver, retrieving a bag from the trunk. "Natalia," he called, his voice rough with disbelief. She turned at the sound of his voice, and even from a distance he could see the mix of hope and fear on her face. "I probably should have called first," she said as the taxi drove away. Lucas crossed the yard in long strides, stopping just short of where she stood. "What are you doing here?" "I made a mistake," Natalia said simply. "Leaving, it was a mistake." Hope flared in Lucas's chest, but he tamped it down. "What happened in the city?" "Nothing happened. That's just it." Natalia set her bag on the ground. "I got exactly what I thought I wanted. A job, a room of my own, independence." She took a deep breath. "And I was miserable." "Why?" "Because none of it meant anything without—" She hesitated. "Without this place. Without you." Lucas felt his heart rate quicken. "Natalia, I know I have no right to come back here after walking away," she interrupted. "I know Elena has been visiting, and maybe you and she, maybe I'm too late. But I had to try. I had to see if there was still a place for me here. Elena and I aren't together," Lucas said firmly. "She visits because she wants me to sell the farm and move to the city. It's the same argument we've been having for years." Relief flashed across Natalia's face. "Oh, as for whether there's still a place for you here," Lucas took a step closer to her. "There will always be a place for you at Boa Esperança. Always." Natalia's eyes filled with tears. "I was so afraid you'd turn me away." "Never." Lucas reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed a tear from her cheek. "When you left, it was like the heart went out of this place. Nothing felt right anymore. I kept thinking about your note," Natalia said softly, "about having food when I'm hungry, rest when I'm tired, and love," Lucas finished, "if you want it." Their eyes met, and in that moment, all the walls Natalia had built around her heart began to crumble. "I do want it," she whispered. "I was just too scared to admit it." Lucas took her hands in his. "I'm scared too. Loving someone means being vulnerable. It means risking pain, but some risks are worth taking." Natalia nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "So what happens now?" "Now," Lucas said, picking up her bag, "you come home, if that's what you want." "Home," Natalia repeated, the word feeling right in her mouth. "Yes, that's exactly what I want." As they walked toward the farmhouse together, the afternoon sun bathing Boa Esperança in golden light, Natalia felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She had left seeking independence, only to discover that true freedom came not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand beside someone who valued your strength rather than diminished it. And Lucas, watching Natalia's face as she took in the farm with new eyes, felt the hollow ache in his chest finally begin to heal. She had come back, not out of desperation or necessity, but out of choice, out of love. The future stretched before them, full of challenges and uncertainties, but they would face them together on this land that had brought them both exactly what they needed: food when they were hungry, shelter when they were tired, and love, freely given and joyfully received. The next few weeks at Boa Esperança passed in a blur of activity as Lucas and Natalia prepared for the harvest. The orange trees were heavy with fruit, and the corn was nearly ready to be picked. From sunrise to sunset they worked side by side, their movements falling into an easy rhythm, as if they had been doing this together for years instead of weeks. But things were different now. Their relationship had shifted, deepened. The air between them was charged with unspoken emotions and new possibilities. They hadn't defined what they were to each other yet, both still cautious, both still learning to trust in this fragile happiness they had found. One evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Lucas reached over and took Natalia's hand. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. "Are you happy here?" he asked, his voice quiet in the gathering dusk. Natalia squeezed his hand. "Happier than I've ever been." Lucas nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "I've been thinking about the farm, about the future." "What about it?" "I want to expand the orchard, maybe add some avocado trees on the north slope." He turned to look at her. "But I don't want to make those decisions alone anymore. I want your input, your ideas." Natalia felt a flutter in her chest. "Why?" "It's your farm, Lucas. Because you're part of Boa Esperança now," he said simply. "What happens here affects you too." The implication of his words hung in the air between them. He wasn't just asking about farm decisions. He was asking about their future together. "I like the idea of avocado trees," Natalia said softly. "And maybe we could expand the vegetable garden too, grow enough to sell at the farmer's market in town." Lucas's face broke into a smile. "We could. The soil by the creek is perfect for vegetables." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands still intertwined, each lost in thoughts of a shared future. Then Lucas cleared his throat. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about." Natalia turned to face him, noting the serious tone in his voice. "What is it?" Elena called. "Today. She wants to come by this weekend to discuss a business opportunity." Her words, not mine. Natalia felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Despite Lucas's assurances that nothing was happening between him and Elena, she couldn't help but feel threatened by the elegant city woman, who clearly wanted Lucas back. "What kind of business opportunity?" Lucas shrugged. "She wouldn't say over the phone, just that it was important and could change everything for the farm." He sighed. "I told her she could come on Sunday afternoon." "Do you want me to make myself scarce while she's here?" Natalia asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Lucas looked surprised. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "Because it might be easier for you to talk business without me around. I don't know anything about real estate or investments or whatever Elena wants to discuss." "Natalia." Lucas turned fully toward her, taking both her hands in his. "I want you here precisely because I don't trust Elena's business opportunities. You see things clearly, without the baggage of history that Elena and I have. Besides," he added with a small smile, "you're much better at saying no than I am." Natalia couldn't help but smile back. "That's true. I've had a lot of practice." "So you'll stay? Be here when Elena comes?" "If that's what you want." Lucas lifted, one hand to gently touch her cheek. "What I want is for us to face whatever comes together. No more running away, no more pushing each other away. Just us, figuring things out as a team." The tenderness in his touch, the warmth in his eyes, made Natalia's heart swell with emotion. In that moment, she knew she would do anything to protect what they were building together, this fragile, beautiful thing that felt so much like home. "As a team," she agreed, leaning slightly into his touch. The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. Lucas's eyes dropped to her lips, and Natalia felt herself leaning forward, drawn to him by a force as natural as gravity. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered in the space of a heartbeat. When they pulled apart, Lucas's eyes were filled with a mixture of wonder and certainty. "I've wanted to do that since the day you came back," he confessed. Natalia smiled. What took you so long? I was afraid of scaring you away again, he admitted. I wanted to give you time. I'm not going anywhere, Natalia said softly. Not this time. Lucas pulled her close and they sat together as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the evening sky, their future stretching before them like an unwritten story full of promise. Sunday arrived all too quickly. Lucas and Natalia spent the morning doing routine chores, both slightly on edge about Elena's impending visit. When they heard the sound of a car coming up the driveway around 2 o'clock, they exchanged a look of mutual support before going to meet their visitor. Elena stepped out of her car looking as polished and sophisticated as ever, in a sleek pantsuit and designer sunglasses. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Natalia standing beside Lucas. Natalia, what a surprise! Elena's voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were calculating. I didn't realize you were back at the farm. When we met at that little cafe in the city, you seemed so settled there. Things change, Natalia replied simply. Elena's gaze flicked between Lucas and Natalia, noting their proximity, the ease between them. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Indeed they do. Well, this is perfect, actually. What I have to discuss affects both of you. She held up a leather portfolio. Shall we go inside? This is rather important. Lucas led the way to the kitchen, where they sat around the wooden table. Elena placed her portfolio in front of her and folded her hands on top of it, every inch the professional businesswoman. Lucas, do you remember Victor Mendez? He was at that economic development conference we attended in Brasilia 2 years ago. Lucas nodded cautiously. Vaguely. Real estate developer, right? Exactly. Well, Victor now heads a major agricultural investment group. They're looking to establish a network of organic farms supplying high-end restaurants and specialty markets in São Paulo. Elena leaned forward, her voice taking on an excited edge. And they're very interested in Boa Esperança. Lucas frowned. Interested how? Elena opened her portfolio and pulled out a glossy brochure. They want to buy your farm, Lucas, for a very generous price. She slid a document across the table. Take a look. Lucas glanced at the paper, his eyes widening slightly at the figure. Printed there. It was indeed generous, far more than the farm was worth by conventional market standards. They would keep the Boa Esperança name, Elena continued smoothly. You'd be hired as a consultant to oversee the transition, with a substantial salary. They'd modernize the equipment, expand the orchards, bring in professional management. She smiled radiantly. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Lucas. You could finally be free of the daily grind of running this place yourself. Natalia watched Lucas's face carefully. The amount on that paper could change his life. He could move to the city, live comfortably, never have to worry about droughts or pests or broken equipment again. For a moment, her heart sank. How could he say no to such an offer? Lucas was quiet for a long moment, studying the proposal. Then he looked up at Elena, his expression unreadable. And what's your stake in this, Elena? I assume you're not bringing this to me out of the goodness of your heart. Elena's smile didn't waver. I would be the broker, of course. Standard commission. She waved a hand dismissively. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I care. About you, Lucas. This farm has been holding you back for years. This is your chance to finally live the life you deserve. The life you think I deserve, Lucas corrected quietly. Not the life I've chosen. Elena's smile slipped a little. Lucas, be reasonable. Look at this place. It's charming, yes, but it's also old, isolated, and frankly a lot of work for very little return. With this money you could— I know exactly what I could do with that money, Lucas interrupted. But at what cost? He closed the brochure and slid it back across the table. I'm not interested, Elena. Elena's composure cracked slightly. You haven't even thought about it. I don't need to. Lucas's voice was firm but not unkind. Boa Esperança isn't just land and buildings to me. It's my heritage, my home. I'm not selling it to become part of some corporate supply chain, no matter how organic they claim to be. Elena turned to Natalia, a hint of desperation in her eyes. Natalia, surely you can see how beneficial this would be. You both could. Move to the city, live comfortably. No more backbreaking work from dawn till dusk. Natalia met Elena's gaze steadily. It's not my decision to make. It's Lucas's farm. But you influence him, Elena pressed. He clearly cares about your opinion. And I care about what makes him happy, Natalia replied. This farm makes him happy. It's as simple as that. Elena's carefully maintained facade finally cracked. This isn't about the farm, it never has been. She looked at Lucas, her expression raw with emotion. It's about us, Lucas, it's always been about us. Lucas sighed, his face softening with compassion. There is no us, Elena. There hasn't been. For a long time. We want different things, we always have. Because you never gave us a real chance. Elena's voice rose slightly. You were always more committed to this farm than to me. You're right, Lucas admitted. And that wasn't fair to you. You deserved someone who would put you first, who would choose the life you wanted. I wanted you, Elena said, her voice smaller. No, you wanted the idea of me, the man you thought I could become, Lucas shook his head. But that man doesn't exist, Elena. This, he gestured around the kitchen at the farm beyond the windows, this is who I am. It's who I've always been. Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She looked at Natalia, really looked at her for perhaps the first time. And she accepts that? She's willing to spend her life out here in the middle of nowhere? She accepts me, Lucas said simply. Farm and all. Something shifted in Elena's expression, a mixture of realization and reluctant acceptance. She gathered her papers with slightly trembling hands. The offer stands for 30 days, she said, her professional mask sliding back into place. In case you change your mind, Lucas nodded, though they all knew he wouldn't. Thank you for bringing it to me. Elena stood, clutching her portfolio like a shield. I should go. I'll walk you to your car, Lucas offered. As they stepped outside, Natalia remained at the table, giving them privacy for their goodbye. Through the window, she could see them talking. Elena gesturing emphatically, Lucas standing firm but kind. Finally, Elena got into her car and drove away, gravel spraying from her tires as she accelerated down the driveway. Lucas returned to the kitchen, his expression thoughtful. Are you okay? Natalia asked. He nodded, sitting back down beside her. I am. I think that was the closure Elena and I both needed. He reached for Natalia's hand. But what about you? That was a lot of money I just turned down. It's your farm, Lucas, your decision. But it affects you too, especially if... He hesitated. Especially if you're planning to stay. Long term, I mean. Natalia felt her heart quicken. Is that what you want? Me staying long term? Lucas's eyes held hers, sincere and unguarded. Yes, it is. More than anything. Then I'm glad you turned it down, Natalia said honestly. Because the Lucas She paused, not quite ready to say the word that hovered on her lips. The Lucas I care about belongs here. On this land. It's part of who you are. Lucas lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Thank you for understanding. That not everyone would. I'm not everyone, Natalia reminded him with a smile. No, Lucas agreed, his eyes warm with affection. You're definitely not everyone. The next morning, Lucas was unusually quiet as they went about their chores. Natalia could sense something was on his mind, but she didn't press. He would talk when he was ready. They were in the orchard checking the oranges for ripeness when Lucas finally broke the silence. I've been thinking about something Elena said yesterday. Natalia tensed slightly. What's that? About this farm being isolated, about the hard work for little return. He looked around at the trees surrounding them, heavy with fruit. She's not entirely wrong. What do you mean? Lucas sighed. Boa Esperanza has been profitable, but just barely. My father struggled with it, and so have I. There's so much potential here, but I've never had the capital to really make the improvements the farm needs. The offer from that investment group... No, Lucas interrupted firmly. I'm not selling. But that doesn't mean we can't change things, make the farm work better for us. What are you thinking? Natalia asked, curious now. I'm thinking we should diversify, expand beyond just oranges and corn. Add those avocado trees we talked about. Maybe some specialty crops for the restaurants in town. His eyes lit up with enthusiasm. And what about your idea of selling vegetables at the farmer's market? We could start small, see how it goes. Natalia found herself caught up in his excitement. We could also look into agritourism. The farmhouse has plenty of room. We could fix up a couple of rooms for weekend guests from the city, people who want to experience farm life without the long-term commitment. Yes! Lucas's face broke into a broad smile. Exactly that. We have the space, the beautiful location. People would pay good money for a peaceful weekend in the country. It would be a lot of work, Natalia cautioned, especially at first. I know. But we'd be working for ourselves, building something that's ours. Lucas stopped, seeming to realize what he'd said. I mean, if that's something you'd want, to build something together here with me. The vulnerability in his voice, the hopeful question in his eyes made Natalia's heart swell. For so long she had been afraid to dream of a future, afraid to put down roots anywhere. But here, with Lucas, on this land that had begun to feel like home, she could finally see a path forward that didn't involve running away. Yes, she said simply, that's exactly what I want. Lucas's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her slightly off her feet in his enthusiasm, and kissed her with a passion that left them both breathless. We'll need a loan, he said when they finally broke apart, his mind already racing with plans. The bank in town knows me, knows the farm. I think they'd be willing to help finance the expansions. And we should start small, Natalia added, practical as always. One project at a time, maybe the vegetable garden first, since that would have the quickest return. Lucas nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. You know what this means, don't you? If we do this together, if we take out loans and make plans that span years, it means we're committed, Natalia finished for him, to the farm, to each other. Are you ready for that? It was a fair question. A month ago, Natalia had run away from this very commitment, too afraid to trust in happiness, too used to standing alone. But now, looking into Lucas's eyes, feeling the solid strength of his arms around her, she knew her answer with absolute certainty. I'm ready, she said. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The following weeks were a whirlwind, of activity. The harvest began, keeping them busy from dawn until dusk, bringing in the oranges and corn. Lucas hired temporary workers from town to help, and Natalia organized the picking schedule, proving she had a talent for management. In their rare moments of free time, they worked on their plans for the farm's expansion. Lucas drew up proposals for the bank, while Natalia researched which vegetables would sell best at the local market and what would be needed to convert part of the farmhouse into guest accommodations. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and plans, Lucas looked up at Natalia with a thoughtful expression. You know, if we're going to do this, really do this, there's something we should talk about. Natalia set down her pencil. What's that? Your position here. Legally, I mean. Lucas looked uncomfortable, but determined. Right now, you're technically still just working for me. But if we're going to expand the farm together, take out loans together, Lucas, what are you saying? He took a deep breath. I'm saying I want to make you a partner in Boa Esperanza. Officially. Half the farm, half the responsibility, half the rewards. Natalia stared at him, stunned. But this is your family's land, your heritage. And I want it to be your heritage, too. Lucas reached across the table to take her hand. Natalia, I love you. I want to build a life with you here, a future that belongs to both of us. It was the first time he had said those words, I love you, and they hung in the air between them, momentous and transformative. Lucas, Natalia whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. Are you sure? The farm is everything to you. You're everything to me, he corrected gently. The farm is just land and trees without you in it. Natalia felt something shift inside her, the last walls around her heart finally crumbling away. I love you too, she said, the words coming easily now that they had been spoken first. But I can't let you give me half your farm. Lucas's face fell. Why not? Because it should be our farm in every way, Natalia said, squeezing his hand. Not just on paper, not just as business partners. Lucas's eyes widened as he understood what she was saying. "Natalia, are you asking me to marry me?" she finished for him, surprising herself with her boldness. "If we're going to build this life together, let's do it right." For a moment, Lucas just stared at her, shock written across his features. Then a slow smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes with joy. "I was supposed to be the one asking you," he said with a laugh. "You took too long," Natalia teased, though her heart was pounding. "So what's your answer?" Lucas stood up, pulling Natalia to her feet and into his arms. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was a promise, a beginning, a declaration of everything they had found in each other. Not just food and shelter, but love. The kind of love that heals old wounds and builds new dreams. The kind of love that turns a house into a home and a piece of land into a future. Word of their engagement spread quickly through the small community. The neighbors who had known Lucas since childhood stopped by with congratulations and small gifts. Even the workers hired for the harvest offered their well wishes, charmed by the romance of it all. The city woman who had arrived hungry and alone, now preparing to become the mistress of Boa Esperança alongside the man who had taken her in. Lucas insisted they shouldn't wait too long to marry. "The harvest will be over in a few weeks," he said, as they sat on the porch one evening. "What about after that? Something small, here at the farm." Natalia smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "That sounds perfect. I don't need anything fancy, just you, me, and this place. We should invite your family," Lucas said carefully, aware this was a sensitive topic. Natalia rarely spoke of her family, and he had respected her privacy, not pushing for details she wasn't ready to share. Natalia tensed slightly. "There's no one to invite. My mother died when I was 16. My father—" She paused, old pain flickering across her face. "Let's just say we're not in contact anymore." Lucas put his arm around her, pulling her closer. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up painful memories. It's okay." Natalia sighed. "You should know if we're going to get married. My father was not a kind man. After my mother died, he started drinking. He became someone I didn't recognize, angry, violent. When I was 20, I finally got the courage to leave." "That's why you were so determined to be independent," Lucas realized. "Why you were so afraid to rely on anyone." Natalia nodded. "The last time I depended on someone who was supposed to love me, it ended badly. Very badly." Lucas tightened his arm around her. "Thank you for trusting me with this, and for giving us a chance despite everything you've been through." "You made it easy," Natalia said softly. "You never asked for anything I wasn't ready to give. You just offered food, shelter, love, no strings attached. And now?" "Now I want all the string," she said with a small smile. "All the connections, all the promises. I want to be tied to you, to this farm, to the life we're building together in every way possible." Lucas kissed the top of her head, his heart full. "Then that's exactly what you'll have." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land that would soon be theirs together, Lucas and Natalia sat in comfortable silence, each lost in thoughts of the future they were crafting, a future built on trust, hard work, and the kind of love that comes along once in a lifetime, if you're lucky enough to recognize it when it appears at your door. The day before their wedding, Natalia was in the kitchen preparing a welcome dinner for Lucas's sister and her family, who had arrived from the city to attend the ceremony. Lucas had gone to the town to pick up his suit and take care of some last-minute details. The sound of a car coming up the driveway caught Natalia's attention. Thinking Lucas had returned early, she wiped her hands on a towel and went to the door. But the car pulling up wasn't Lucas's truck. It was a rental, one she didn't recognize. A man stepped out, tall and thin with graying hair and a face weathered by years of hard living. Despite the years that had passed, Natalia recognized him immediately and felt her blood run cold. "Hello, Natalia," her father said, his voice gravelly, from years of cigarettes and alcohol. "Aren't you going to invite your old man in?" Natalia stood frozen in the doorway, her mind racing. How had he found her? Why was he here? "What are you doing here?" she managed to ask, her voice steadier than she felt. Roberto Viana shrugged, his movement unnervingly familiar. I heard my only daughter is getting married tomorrow. Thought I should be here to give her away. How did you find out about the wedding? Small town's big gossip. Roberto took a step closer. I've been working construction in a town about 50 miles from here. Overheard some locals talking about the nice farmer who was marrying the girl who showed up at his door with nothing. Didn't take much to figure out it was you. Natalia gripped the doorframe, trying to ground herself. You need to leave. Now. Roberto's face hardened, a look Natalia remembered all too well. Is that any way to greet your father after all these years, not even going to offer me a drink? You've had enough drinks to last a lifetime, Natalia said, finding her courage. Please leave, Papa. I don't want trouble. Trouble? Roberto laughed, a harsh sound. I'm not here for trouble. I'm here for what's mine. Nothing here is yours. You are, he said, his voice taking on an edge. My daughter, my responsibility. I stopped being your responsibility the night you raised your fist to me for the last time, Natalia said, her voice shaking slightly with the effort of confronting old demons. Now please leave before Lucas gets back. Ah, Lucas. Roberto's smile didn't reach his eyes. The wealthy farmer who's taken a shine to my little girl. I'm looking forward to meeting my new son-in-law. Natalia felt sick. This was exactly what she had feared. Her past crashing into her future, the happiness she had found at Boa Esperanza threatened by the darkness she had left behind. What do you want? She asked bluntly. Money. Is that why you're here? Roberto placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. Can't a father want to see his daughter happy? Be part of her special day? You never cared about my happiness before. People change, Natalia. His voice softened, becoming wheedling. I've changed. I've been sober for 6 months now, working steady, trying to make amends. Natalia wanted to believe him. Some small childish part of her still longed for a father who cared, who could be proud of her, who could walk her down the aisle tomorrow with genuine joy. But she had learned the hard way that Roberto Viana's promises were as substantial as smoke. If you've really changed, then respect my wishes, she said firmly. Leave now, let me have my wedding in peace. Roberto's face darkened. So that's how it is? You're too good for your old man now that you've found yourself a rich farmer. Lucas isn't rich. And this isn't about money. It's always about money, Roberto spat. Everything is. And I'm betting your precious Lucas doesn't know the whole story about where you come from, does he? About your old man's time in prison, about how you ran away like a thief in the night. I told him everything he needs to know, Natalia said. Though fear coiled in her stomach at the threat implicit in her father's words. Everything. Roberto raised an eyebrow. I doubt that. What would the good farmer think if he knew the whole ugly truth? Before Natalia could respond, she heard the sound of Lucas's truck coming up the driveway. Relief washed over her, followed quickly by dread. She didn't want Lucas to meet her father like this, with tension crackling in the air and old wounds laid bare. Lucas parked next to the rental car, his expression curious as he approached the house. Natalia, everything okay? Roberto turned, a smile spreading across his face that didn't reach his eyes. You must be Lucas. I'm Roberto Viana, Natalia's father. He extended his hand. I've come for the wedding. Lucas looked at Roberto, then at Natalia, clearly reading the distress on her face. He shook Roberto's hand briefly. Mr. Viana, this is unexpected. Call me Roberto, please. We're going to be family, after all. Lucas moved to stand beside Natalia, his presence solid and reassuring. Natalia didn't mention you would be coming. She didn't know, Roberto said with a shrug. It was a last-minute decision. Couldn't miss my only daughter's wedding day, could I? Lucas looked at Natalia, his eyes asking a silent question. She gave a small shake of her head. Mr. Viana, Lucas said, his voice polite but firm. I'm afraid we weren't prepared for extra guests. The wedding is very small, just family. I am family, Roberto insisted, his friendly facade beginning to crack. Her only family. Not anymore, Natalia said quietly but clearly. Please leave, Papa, don't ruin this for me. Roberto's expression hardened. You ungrateful little... That's enough, Lucas interrupted, stepping slightly in front of Natalia. Mr. Viana, I'm going to have to ask you to go now. Roberto looked between them, calculation in his eyes. Fine, I know when I'm not wanted. He took a step back toward his car, then turned. But this isn't over, Natalia, not by a long shot. They watched as Roberto got into his rental car and drove away, gravel spraying from his tires. Only when he was out of sight did Natalia let out the breath she had been holding, her body beginning to tremble with delayed reaction. Lucas turned to her, concern written across his face. "Are you okay?" Natalia nodded, though she felt far from okay. "I'm sorry, I had no idea he would show up like this." "Don't apologize," Lucas said firmly, leading her inside the house. "None of this is your fault." Once inside, Natalia sank into a kitchen chair, her legs suddenly weak. Lucas poured her a glass of water and sat beside her, waiting patiently for her to speak. "He found out about the wedding from gossip in a nearby town," Natalia finally said. "He claims he's changed, that he's sober now." "Do you believe him?" Natalia shook her head. "I've heard it all before. He makes promises when he wants something, then breaks them as soon as he gets it, or doesn't get it. What do you think he wants now? Money, probably, or just to disrupt my life because he can." Natalia looked up at Lucas, fear in her eyes. "What if he comes back tomorrow, tries to ruin the wedding?" Lucas took her hands in his. "Then we'll deal with it, together. I won't let him hurt you, Natalia. Not ever." The certainty in his voice, the steadiness of his gaze, calmed the storm of anxiety in Natalia's chest. This was why she loved him, his quiet strength, his unwavering support. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding," she suggested hesitantly. "Just until we're sure he's gone for good. Is that what you want?" Natalia thought about it, really thought about what she wanted. "No," she said finally. "I want to marry you tomorrow, as planned. I've let my father control too much of my life. Already. I won't let him take this from me, too." Lucas smiled, pride and love shining in his eyes. "That's my girl." Natalia felt strength returning to her limbs, determination replacing fear. Whatever her father was planning, whatever trouble he might try to cause, she wouldn't face it alone. This time. She had Lucas now, and together they could weather any storm, even one named Roberto Viana. "I should finish dinner," she said, standing up. "Your sister will be back with the kids soon." Lucas stood with her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "Nothing your father says or does can change that." Natalia held onto him tightly, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I love you too," she whispered. "Thank you for standing by me." "Always," Lucas promised. "Food, shelter, love. Remember? That's what we offer each other, now and forever." As they prepared for their wedding day, the shadow of Roberto's visit lingered, but it couldn't dim the light of what they had found together at Boa Esperança, a love strong enough to withstand any challenge, even those that arrived unexpectedly, on the eve of their new beginning. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the orange trees. Lucas had spent the night at his sister Maria's hotel in town, following the old tradition of not seeing the bride before the ceremony. Natalia woke early, her mind immediately turning to the confrontation with her father the previous day. Despite Lucas's reassurances, she couldn't shake the feeling that Roberto wouldn't give up so easily. He had never been one to walk away from what he considered his due. She pushed the troubling thoughts aside as she got out of bed. Today was her wedding. A day she had never imagined for herself until Lucas came into her life. She wouldn't let her father's shadow darken it. Maria arrived at the farmhouse shortly after breakfast, bringing with her the simple white dress they had chosen together in town. Not a formal wedding gown, but a beautiful sundress of crisp cotton with delicate embroidery around the hem. "Lucas sent this," Maria said, handing Natalia a small box with a ribbon around it. "He said to tell you he can't wait to see you." Inside the box was a slender silver bracelet with a small charm, a tiny silver orange blossom, the symbol of Boa Esperança. "It was our mother's," Maria explained, helping Natalia fasten it around her wrist. "Lucas wanted you to have something of hers today." Tears pricked at Natalia's eyes. "It's beautiful." "She would have loved you," Maria said warmly. "Anyone who makes my brother smile the way you do would have won her heart instantly." As Maria helped her with her hair and a touch of makeup, Natalia found herself relaxing, the worry about her father receding. The ceremony would be small and intimate, just Lucas's immediate family, a few close neighbors, and the local pastor. They had decided to hold it in the orchard, among the trees that had brought them together. By early afternoon, everything was ready. Simple white chairs had been arranged in rows, facing an arch woven with orange blossoms and greenery. A path of scattered flower petals led from the house to the makeshift altar. Natalia stood at the kitchen window, watching as the guests arrived and were shown to their seats. Lucas was already there, looking handsome in his suit, talking with the pastor. "Ready?" Maria asked, making a final adjustment to Natalia's hair. Natalia nodded, a sense of calm certainty washing over her. More than ready. As they stepped out, onto the porch, Natalia scanned the small gathering one last time, half expecting to see her father lurking on the periphery. But there was no sign of Roberto, and she allowed herself to hope that perhaps he had given up after all. Lucas's brother-in-law, Carlos, was waiting to escort her down the aisle in place of her father. He offered his arm with a warm smile. "You look beautiful," he said kindly. "Lucas is a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Natalia replied, taking his arm. The simple ceremony began with Maria's children walking ahead, the little girl tossing flower petals, the boy carrying a small pillow, with the rings. Then came Natalia on Carlos's arm, her heart swelling as she saw Lucas waiting for her, his face alight with love and wonder. When she reached him, Lucas took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. The pastor began the service, his words blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. Natalia felt as though she were in a dream, a beautiful dream from which she never wanted to wake. They exchanged simple vows, promises to love and cherish each other through good harvests and bad, through sunny days and storms. Lucas's voice was steady and sure as he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger. Natalia's hand trembled slightly as she did the same for him, overcome by the magnitude of the moment. "By the power vested in me," the pastor said, smiling broadly, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Lucas, you may kiss your bride." Lucas cupped Natalia's face gently in his hands and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and devotion. The small gathering of guests applauded, and as they turned to face their friends and family as a married couple, Natalia felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. The celebration moved to the farmhouse yard, where tables had been set up under strings of lights. A local band played cheerful music, and platters of food prepared by neighbors covered a long buffet table. Lucas and Natalia moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and good wishes. Lucas's niece and nephew danced around them, clearly delighted by the festivities. "Are you happy?" Lucas asked, pulling Natalia close as the band began a slow song. "Completely," she answered, resting her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music. "Everything is perfect, and for a few magical hours it was. The food was delicious, the music joyful, the company warm and welcoming. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the celebration, Natalia allowed herself to believe that perhaps the happiness she had found with Lucas would remain untouched by the shadows of her past. Then she saw him, Roberto, standing at the edge of the yard, watching the celebration with cold eyes. He had cleaned himself up, wearing a suit that had seen better days, his hair slicked back in an attempt at respectability. Lucas felt Natalia tense in his arms and followed her gaze. "I'll handle this," he said quietly, starting to move toward Roberto. "No," Natalia said, placing a hand on his arm. "This is my father, my problem. I need to deal with him." "We'll deal with him together," Lucas insisted. "That's what marriage means, remember?" Hand in hand they approached Roberto, who offered them a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Beautiful ceremony," he said, as if he had been an invited guest. "Though I'm hurt I wasn't asked to walk my daughter down the aisle." "What are you doing here, Papa?" Natalia asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I came to congratulate my daughter and new son-in-law." Roberto looked past them at the celebration. "Quite a spread you've put on." Boa Esperanza must be doing well, Mr. Viana, Lucas said politely but firmly. We asked you to respect our wishes and stay away. A father has rights, Roberto replied, a hard edge entering his voice. Even when his ungrateful daughter tries to shut him out of her life. Rights? Natalia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. What about responsibilities? What about the responsibility to protect your child, not hurt her? You lost any rights you had the first time you raised your hand to me. Roberto's face darkened. Always so dramatic. A few disciplinary actions and you act like you were tortured. Lucas took a step forward, anger flashing in his eyes. I think you should leave, now. Or what? Roberto challenged. You'll throw me out. Make a scene. At your own wedding, if necessary, Lucas said quietly. Roberto looked between them, calculation in his eyes. I didn't come here to fight. I came to make peace with my daughter on her wedding day. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped package. I even brought a gift. Natalia made no move to take it. What do you really want? Roberto's facade of fatherly concern slipped slightly. Can't a man want to be part of his daughter's life, especially now that she's married into such prosperity? He gestured at the farm around them. So that's it, Natalia said, understanding dawning. You think Lucas is wealthy and you want a piece of it. I've fallen on hard times, Roberto admitted, dropping the pretense. That construction job didn't pan out. I'm behind on rent, about to be evicted. I thought maybe my new son-in-law wouldn't mind helping out his wife's father. After everything you did to me, after you show up uninvited to my wedding and try to ruin the happiest day of my life. Natalia shook her head in disbelief. You haven't changed at all. I'm still your father, Roberto insisted, his voice hardening. In name only, Natalia replied. A real father would be happy for me today, not looking for ways to use me. Roberto's expression turned ugly. You think you're better than me now? Living on this fancy farm, marrying a landowner. Don't forget where you came from, girl, the gutter, just like me. Lucas stepped forward, putting himself between Natalia and her father. That's enough. I'm asking you one last time to leave peacefully. Or, what? Roberto sneered. Or I'll have you removed, Lucas said calmly. I've already spoken to the sheriff in town just in case. One phone call, and he'll be here to escort you off my property. Roberto's eyes darted around, noting for the first time that several of the male guests had noticed the confrontation and were moving closer, concern on their faces. Fine, he spat. Keep your fancy wedding. But this isn't over, Natalia. Family is family. Sooner or later you'll remember that. The only family I need is right here, Natalia said, taking Lucas's hand. Goodbye, Papa. Roberto's face contorted with anger, but seeing himself outnumbered, he turned and stalked away, his shoulders rigid with indignation. Natalia watched him, go a complex mixture of emotions swirling inside her. Relief, sadness, a lingering trace of the little girl who had once loved her father unconditionally. Are you okay? Lucas asked softly, wrapping an arm around her waist. I will be, she answered honestly. He can't hurt me anymore, not really. Lucas pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm proud of you, that took courage. I had you beside me, Natalia said, leaning into his strength. That makes all the difference. They returned to their celebration, and though the encounter with Roberto had cast a momentary shadow, it couldn't diminish the joy of the day. As evening deepened into night, the guests danced and laughed beneath the strings of lights, celebrating not just a wedding, but the promise of new beginnings. Later, when the last guest had departed and the farmhouse was quiet once more, Lucas led Natalia to the porch swing, their spot, where so many important conversations had taken place. They sat together, looking out at the land that was now truly theirs, shared in every way that mattered. So, Mrs. Amaral, Lucas said, his voice warm with affection, was it everything you hoped for? Despite the unexpected guest? It was more than I ever dared hope for, Natalia answered truthfully. When I knocked on your gate that day, hungry and desperate, I never imagined. Her voice trailed off, overcome by the journey that had brought them to this moment. I knew there was something special about you even then, Lucas said. Something in your eyes, a strength, a fire that hardship couldn't extinguish. I was just trying to survive, Natalia said softly. I never expected to find love. Lucas took her hand, his thumb gently caressing the gold band on her finger. That's how the best love stories happen, I think, when you're not looking for them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night wrapping around them like a gentle blanket. Then Natalia spoke, her voice thoughtful. Do you think he'll come back? My father? Lucas considered the question seriously. He might try. Men, like that, don't give up easily when they think there's something to gain. And if he does, then we'll face him together, Lucas said simply. We won't let him disrupt the life we're building. This is our home, our future. Natalia nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. Whatever her father might do, she wasn't alone anymore. She had Lucas, and together they could withstand any storm. I have something for you, Lucas said after a moment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. A wedding gift. Natalia opened it to find a delicate gold key on a fine chain. What does it open? Lucas smiled. The farmhouse. It's symbolic, really. This is your home now, in every way. No more guest room, no more temporary arrangement. This is where you belong with me on this land. Tears welled in Natalia's eyes as she understood the significance of the gift. All her life she had been searching for a place to belong, a place where she was valued, not for what she could provide but for who she was. And now she had found it, here with Lucas at Boa Esperança. Help me put it on, she asked, handing him the necklace and turning so he could fasten it around her neck. The key rested just over her heart, a tangible reminder of everything they had promised each other that day. Home, security, love without conditions. Perfect, Lucas said, turning her to face him once more. Just like you. Natalia leaned in to kiss him, her heart full to bursting with gratitude and love. Take me inside, husband, she whispered against his lips. Take me home. 6 months. Later, Natalia stood in the expanded vegetable garden, clipboard in hand, checking inventory for the farmer's market the next day. Their first season selling produce had been more successful than they had dared to hope, with customers eagerly seeking out the Boa Esperança stand each week for their fresh, organically grown vegetables. The farm was thriving under their joint care. The bank had approved their loan, allowing them to plant the avocado trees on the north slope and begin renovations on the guest rooms for their agritourism venture. They had already booked their first weekend guests for the coming month, a family from São Paulo eager to experience farm life. Lucas emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. Truck's all loaded for tomorrow, he called as he approached. Anything else we need to do before dinner? I think we're all set, Natalia replied, smiling as he bent to kiss her cheek. The lettuce looks especially good this week. That's your magic touch, Lucas said proudly. You have a way with the vegetables that I never did. And you have a way with the fruit trees that I'm still learning, Natalia countered, tucking her clipboard under her arm. We make a good team. The best, Lucas agreed, slipping an arm around her waist as they walked back toward the house. The farmhouse had changed in subtle ways since their wedding. New curtains hung in the windows, a fresh coat of paint brightened the kitchen, and photographs of their life together adorned the walls, Natalia and Lucas at the farmer's market, smiling with their first harvest, the two of them on their wedding day surrounded by orange trees. Lucas's family gathered on the porch during their monthly visit. It was still the same solid, practical farmhouse, but now it pulsed with life and warmth in a way it hadn't before Natalia arrived. As they entered the kitchen, Natalia moved to the stove where a pot of stew simmered. She gave it a stir, inhaling the rich aroma of vegetables and herbs from their own garden. Smells delicious, Lucas said, washing his hands at the sink. You know, Maria called today while you were at the market. She wants us to come to the city next weekend for Pedro's birthday. That sounds nice, Natalia replied, setting the table for dinner. We could deliver those special avocados she asked for too. Lucas nodded, a slight hesitation in his movement catching Natalia's attention. What is it? She asked, knowing her husband well enough to sense when something was on his mind. There's something else I wanted to talk to you about, Lucas said, his expression turning serious. I ran into Sheriff Gomez in town today. He mentioned that That Roberto was arrested last week. Natalia set down the plates she was holding. Arrested? For what? Trying to cash a forged check. Apparently he's done it before. He's looking at 6 months at least. Natalia absorbed this information, surprised by her own lack of strong emotion. In the months since the wedding, her father had made no further attempts to contact them. She had begun to hope he had given up, moved on to other potential targets for his schemes. How do you feel about that? Lucas asked gently. Natalia considered the question carefully. Sad, I suppose. Sad that he's never been able to change, to be better than his worst impulses. She looked up at Lucas, but also relieved. Relieved that we don't have to worry about him showing up here again, at least for a while. Lucas nodded in understanding. The sheriff mentioned something else. Roberto's been evicted from his apartment. All his belongings are in storage, but he can't pay the fees. Sheriff Gomes thought you might want to know, in case there were any family mementos you wanted to save. Natalia felt a pang at that. Not for her father, but for the few precious items that had belonged to her mother. A locket with her picture, a small wooden box that had played music, things Roberto had probably pawned years ago, but still. Maybe we should check, she said reluctantly. There might be some photos of my mother. We can go next week before we visit Maria, Lucas suggested. Only if you want to. Natalia nodded, grateful for his understanding. Thank you for telling me. No secrets between us, Lucas said, taking her hand. That was our promise, remember? Remember? Natalia squeezed his hand, then returned to setting the table, her mind processing the news about her father. After dinner, as they sat on the porch watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky, Natalia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a hungry, desperate woman with nothing but a torn backpack and fading pride to the co-owner of a thriving farm, married to a man who loved her completely. Penny for your thoughts, Lucas said, echoing the words he had spoken so many months ago, when their feelings for each other were just beginning to take shape. I was thinking about that day I showed up at your gate, Natalia replied. How close I came to walking past to not knocking at all. But you did knock, Lucas said, and I'm grateful every day that you did. You know what made me do it? Natalia turned to look at him, her expression soft in the fading light. It wasn't just hunger or desperation. It was something I saw in your eyes when you first spotted me. Not pity, not suspicion, just recognition. Like you knew me somehow, even though we'd never met. Lucas nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. I felt it too, like you were someone I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. Do you believe in fate? Natalia asked. That some things are meant to be? I'm not sure about fate, Lucas answered thoughtfully. But I do believe in recognizing the right path when it appears before you, in having the courage to take it, even when it's unexpected. Like offering food, shelter, and love to a stranger at your gate, Natalia smiled. Exactly like that. Lucas pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Best decision I ever made. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the farm, crickets chirping, a distant owl, the soft rustle of wind in the trees. Then Natalia took a deep breath, her heart racing slightly with anticipation. Lucas? I have something to tell you. Something important. Lucas turned to look at her, curiosity in his eyes. What is it? Natalia took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. We're going to need to add another chair at the table soon. In about 7 months. Lucas's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and joy spreading across his face. Natalia, are you saying... I'm pregnant, she confirmed, her own face glowing with happiness. We're going to have a baby. For a moment, Lucas seemed unable to speak, overwhelmed by emotion. Then he pulled Natalia into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. A baby, he whispered, his voice thick with wonder. Our baby. Natalia nodded against his chest, tears of joy spilling onto her cheeks. A new life, a new beginning. Lucas pulled back slightly to look into her eyes, his own shining with unshed tears. Thank you, he said simply, for everything, for knocking. On my gate that day, for coming back when you could have stayed away, for loving me, for carrying our child. No, Natalia said, touching his face tenderly. Thank you. For offering food when I was hungry, shelter when I was lost, and love when I thought I would never feel it again. As the stars continued their silent journey across the night sky, Lucas and Natalia held each other close, their hearts beating in unison, their future stretching before them like the vast expanse of Boa Esperanza, rich with promise, fertile with possibility, and nurtured by the deepest, most abiding love either of them had ever known. In the quiet farmhouse on a hill surrounded by orange trees, two lives that had once been separate now flowed together like streams joining to form a river, stronger together than apart, finding their way forward through the landscape of days and seasons, of challenges and joys. Food, shelter, love, the basics, needs of any human heart, the foundation of their beginning, and now the legacy they would pass on to their child, a child who would never know hunger or homelessness or the absence of love, a child of Boa Esperanza, a child of good hope. The